Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our April 25th Joint City-County Shared Services Committee meeting. Just want to quickly take a moment to thank everyone for attending this afternoon. I know this second meeting has been a long time coming, but we are certainly glad to see everyone back in the room, and we're looking forward to some collaborative discussion on the number of agenda items that we have today. So we will get right to it with the roll call.
Through the chair, roll call has been taken.
Wonderful, thank you, Chris. So we will move to number 2 on the agenda, which is declaration of conflicts of interest. So are there any declarations that need to be made at this time? And seeing none, if there are any that arise at any time during the meeting, please let me be the first to know. So that takes us to number 3, which is presentations and delegations, which we have none today. So moving right along to number 4, which is items for consideration. Can I have a mover and a seconder to place all of the items on the floor? Councillor Samwell and Councillor Oakley. So any discussion? So that is 4.1 Joint City County Services Committee Background Update 2024-288, and that is the report from Brian. So any discussion? Mayor Davis.
Yeah, this is, thank you, Madam Chair. It's not a point of discussion. I just wanted to make a procedural request because we're dealing right now with which particular item? 4.1. That's okay. I lost my iPad, so I'm using my city phone. Take me off the list. I got to find it first.
Okay, while the mayor is looking, yeah. Any other? Councillor McCreary.
It makes sense for us to go through these things item by item. We have a number of items of
you guys get all the features.
Divided into 3 categories. There may be some desire to speak to each item on the list.
Yeah, so I think just for clarification, I think you're referring to 4.2, which is, yeah, so we're going to deal with 4.1 first, and then, but yes, absolutely. Councillor Oakley?
Through the chair, procedurally, I'm not sure how we could do this, but it would be possible for us to deal with 4.1 and 4.2 at the same time, given that more or less are dealing with the same topic, and I think it would be inappropriate to deal with one before the other. They really, I think, need to be dealt with at the same time if possible.
I'm going to defer to the clerk for an answer on that one.
Yeah, through the chair. So if you look at item 4.1, it's just to be received. So 4.1, it's just a report providing background history on, where we were, where we've been, and where we're going. So at this point in time, I don't really think they should be coupled. Just vote to receive it, then we can deal with 4.2.
Be okay with that, Councillor Oakley?
Sure.
Okay. Any further discussion on 4.1? Oh, Mayor Bailey.
Oh. Just a note that I can't hear Dan when he speaks.
There's a button.
Okay.
Any further discussion on 4.1? Seeing none, then I will call the vote on item 4.1. All those in favor? Okay, that carries. Okay, so now we will move to 4.2, which is the Joint City County Shared Services shortlist. This is the report from our CAO, Allison Newton. So maybe before we go through all of this, I will have Allison just maybe provide a little bit of explanation on her report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is my microphone working? Okay. just to, for the benefit of everybody around the table, this report was following recommendations from a report that is also attached as an appendix that came to our council for consideration. A note that also, while the items are grouped in to different recommendations, none are being taken off the table. My understanding is this is more of a timing issue and how we approach them in terms of resources and budgeting around the council table at the county. So I just wanted to provide that background for information, but happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so just before we go to discussion, a couple of quick notes. Allison's report does refer to the intimate partner violence, that shared service request. So that one will, if we decide to add that to the list, that will require a 2/3 majority vote, because that will be added to the list as per the committee terms of reference. So when the time comes for that one, I'll make sure I ask for a separate vote on that one. Similarly, the new Brantford General Hospital is a similar situation where that one would require a 2/3 vote. So when we get to that one, I'll ask for that as well. So right now, though, we will have discussion on the report in its entirety. Councillor Hunt first, and then Mayor Davis.
Thank you, and so through you to Allison, I just was reading your report regarding transportation, and you've indicated both the city and the county have a master transportation plan, and then you've indicated that there has been a committee struck. So my question, I'm sorry, I hate talking to somebody behind me. My question is, who's on that committee, and are they meeting, and could we see the mandate of that committee?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't have the mandate in front of me, although I can certainly forward it to this group. My understanding is that staff from operations, certainly at the county, and again, I can't speak to the staff from the city who are on that committee, but I can certainly forward you the names.
Okay. Mayor Davis.
Is it working? Yeah, okay. So this isn't a point of discussion, but I wanted to make a procedural request. And as I understand it, we have various groups A, B, and C, and contained within that, I think are about 14 items. And so I'm going to make a request that we have a separate vote on each of those items, and that they be recorded votes. And I would suggest maybe go around if you open the floor for people to comment on any one of those items, that might be a good way to start things off. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. To Mayor Davis's point, do you really want to open up Group A again, because these are actually activities that are ongoing? Seem it would be counterintuitive to actually close them off when we're both councils fully supporting them.
Absolutely.
Hey, I think I saw Councillor McCreary.
Madam Chair, thank you. So let me suggest that if we're going to do that, if I may lead off, I'd like to talk about physician recruitment. Is that in order, Madam Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So I believe physician recruitment was added initially to create a partnership between city and county around the recruitment of physicians, as the name of the committee might allude to. Now, it's my understanding that from our point of view, we were looking for the county to perhaps make some financial contribution to the support of that committee. And having this come off, of course, city will continue to bear the cost of the initiative in its entirety. And I'm just wondering if we might get comment from the county about whether or not, and I hate to raise this, but as the newest city rep on this committee, the county's attendance is nothing but spotty, and we don't see much engagement. And I'm wondering if the county's reluctance to participate at a greater degree might be best expressed by withdrawing the county's seat at that table and just leaving it to City of Brantford to deal with this in its entirety. But I'd appreciate hearing from county members and maybe from the member who sits on the committee about whether or not the county sees any value in it since it's being removed, and if it's going to be removed, perhaps the county should remove itself from the process entirely.
So I'm not sure, Councillor Bell, are you on that committee?
I am not. I think our member is the mayor, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Councillor McCreary can comment. It is the mayor?
Yeah, the mayor's got his, Mayor Bailey, will go to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. We have had the discussion at that committee that I was going to be still on the committee, but we were going to take care of the recruitment of the physicians we needed to fill the complement of our own facility, which is the health hub. And as soon as we were done that, we were going to keep working with the city on the recruitment. But right now, when we have a facility that we can show the doctors when we bring them here and show them what they would be signing up for, and it was much easier to do that, and we've had success in that lately. Than to talk about a hospital that we really didn't know whether it was going to be a new build or a Frankenstein build or what it was going to be. We found it easier in the county to fill our own seats at our own table before we, and once we do that, we will certainly, certainly cooperate with the recruitment for the city too. But we do have a facility that needs to be filled to its full complement now.
Thanks, Mayor Bailey. I think, and Allison can perhaps correct me if I'm wrong, I think probably the other rationale for having it appear on that C list was simply because the county had already committed our own funds to our own program. So we wanted to kind of wait and see how that shook out by the end of the year before we committed to something else, because we wouldn't necessarily have any funds to commit to the second program at this time. But perhaps Allison could comment on that.
Not sure if this is working yet. That's correct. So prior to this committee being struck, there was a commitment made through our budget process and through development of the health hub to have our own physician recruitment program, and there are funds committed for 2024, and a recruiter has been hired. So it was simply pointing out that we would like to be able to evaluate the efficacy of that before we commit to another program.
Councillor Zicoli?
Yes, thank you. And through you to staff, was this commitment of funds in place prior to our joint services meeting in October?
Through you, Madam Chair, the commitment of funds was in place. We had no recruiter in place at that time, although we were in a bit of a in-between stage as we were transitioning our CEO of BME, who was in charge of physician recruitment at that time and had recently resigned. So we hadn't started the program, but a commitment of funds were made at that time.
Okay, so what was the rationale between unanimously supporting adding this as something we were going to review together and then sort of floundering on that? I would rather see this be removed altogether rather than leaving the city swaying in the wind for a year, waiting to see if the county wants to work with us on this. I think this is a time where decisions are made. It sounds like we're going to have a pretty fulsome discussion on all these topics tonight. So I guess I'm looking for clear direction from the county. Do you or do you not want to work with the city of Brantford on physician recruitment?
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, well, I'll give you my shot at that, Rose. The answer is yes, but not yet. And I think that's what Mayor Bailey said. And we've already set something on train, and so that in principle, yes, we would like to. But we do have our own facility that we need to get filled up quickly. We're very, very short on doctors. We do have doctors retiring shortly. So when we fill those, then we'll work together. That would be the intention. And if you want somebody to say, let's take this off the table for the foreseeable future, I'll make that motion.
Councillor McCreary?
First, I guess I should wait until there's a seconder and it's on the floor for discussion.
Okay, Councillor Oakley is second. Okay, Councillor McCreary.
So perhaps staff could rule then whether or not what's before us sees the county vacating their seat on this committee. Is that what's before us, Madam Chair? Sorry, vacating their seat on the physician recruitment committee. Is that the understanding of staff, what the councillor's resolution is doing?
Councillor Bell, do you want to clarify that?
Yeah, I would like to. I mean, I think we need to make a distinction between the campaign that we're following, which is to recruit family physicians for a specific facility. I believe the physician recruitment campaign that the city runs and which Mayor Bailey sits on actually is trying to attract physicians not only to family physician roles, but also for the hospital. And I think given that we will be, and we're coming to talk about that later, we will be joint funders of any new hospital. I think it's appropriate that we do have somebody representing us, if Mayor Bailey wishes to continue to do it. And if not, then I'd be more than willing to do it as well.
Councillor Sicoli?
I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because it leaves the committee riddled with conflict when it's only being funded by one side of the table, right? It's conflicting because they have a mandate based on who pays their wages to recruit physicians for not only BGH, but for the Willet and family physicians throughout. And it creates quite the conflict for the individuals who are tasked with that role when they're only being funded by one side of the party here. So I think it's only fair that maybe the county come to the table and contribute to that, or just set us free, move on, relinquish your role, do what you have to do. And I full support if you have someone that you think is great and is doing a great job for you. I'm happy to see that. But you can't have it both ways. You can't leave us floundering. You can't leave us riddled with conflict. And so I'd like to bring an amendment to the amendment, adding in a part 2 that the city will relinquish their role on the physician recruitment task. Or sorry, the county. Sorry, the county will relinquish their role on the physician recruitment task force.
Okay, so we have an amendment to the amendment that has been seconded. So discussion on the amendment to the amendment. Councillor McCreary and then Councillor Chambers.
So procedurally, I don't see how this committee can give direction to the county to unappoint someone to a committee. I think we're on the wrong track with that. I think it should be moved by county councilor that they refer that to their council, and that the county reps take that back to have it sanctioned by county council, and then it's completely off this plate. And I agree completely. And I'm sorry to put it in blunt terms, but if you don't want to pay, then you're not going to play. I think that would be a summary from what I'm hearing from city councilors.
Okay, Councillor Chambers and then Councillor Oakley.
Just procedurally, Madam Chairman, the discussion around this table at this committee is at this point whether we're going to discuss physician recruitment. I think the motion is that it not be discussed at this committee. The members of county council here are not in a position to make decisions on county council, so voting on that amendment is a little bit out of order for this committee. So simply put, the county, from my understanding, does not want to proceed in the way that the city may want to proceed, but this committee is a committee to discuss that kind of thing, and the motion is to remove it from discussion. If you remove it from discussion, then the county can get its act in order. The city can respond to the county once it gets its act in the order, and then you're on your merry way. But this committee, the motion is that it be removed from discussion, and I support that, to remove it, because we're getting bogged down on something that members of this committee have no authority to respond to.
Okay, Councillor Oakley?
Through the chair, just a couple thoughts in this regard. I can't disagree with the city councilors in regards to if we're not willing to chip in, then it's hard for us to sit and have say on what goes on there. Just a procedural question: if we end up voting to remove physician recruitment from discussion as committee and postpone it as per it being in Group C, what does that do with report 4.3? Just in sort of when the county discussed this, the way I was envisioning Group C, and I think the way many of us were envisioning it, those would be items that were just kind of on hold until one particular party had a proposal. It just so happens that we have a proposal in front of us in 4.3 in how to address it. So I don't, it just my 2 cents. I don't know if it's necessarily out of order for us to remove it because we're just to postpone it, not remove it, to postpone physician recruitment. It just so happens that we're also receiving the proposal in the same meeting here. So I'm wondering if some of this discussion on how we might tackle the physician recruitment is better for getting to when we actually get to 4.3, if any of that made sense.
Through to the chair, 4.3, that report is just to receive it as information. So if the committee did decide to remove physician recruitment from part of its mandate, it would have no effect on that report. The committee would just have to vote to receive the report as information.
Okay, Mayor Davis and then Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, I think it's completely in order. The issue is there. It's physician recruitment. The item is there. And yeah, you could have that it's going to be referred off, but at the same time, this committee could request. I think that's the proper motion, that this committee requests that the county recuse itself from the committee. Seems in order. I think that's with the intent of the motion.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment to the amendment is still what we're discussing. Councillor Chambers?
Could someone read the original motion that is being amended to?
Yeah, through the chair, I believe the first amendment was to remove the physician recruitment from the mandate. So not postponing it, just the removal of it from the mandate. And then the amendment to the amendment was to request that the county relinquish their seat from the physician committee recruitment committee. Request, yeah.
Councillor Chambers?
So just explain it to me. You're the clerk. The motion is to remove it or postpone it, or the amendment to the original recommendation is to remove it. And then we have an amendment to do something with it, which would be contrary to the motion to remove it. So.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Chris for some.
Yeah, so through the chair, I believe the intent of the first amendment is to remove physician recruitment from the shared services mandate. In addition to that, since it's no longer part of the mandate for this committee, that the county branch be requested to relinquish their role on the physician recruitment committee as part of that recommendation as well.
Councillor Sluss.
Thank you. This committee is making recommendations to both councils, so that's the recommendation coming from this committee is to do those 2 items that we've just suggested. So it's perfectly in order.
Any further discussion? Councillor McCreary?
Madam Chair, thank you. I think perhaps the mover and seconder might also consider that a request be made to revise the terms of reference for the physician recruitment committee, if that would be friendly to you folks that moved and seconded.
That's friendly.
It's a revision to terms of reference for physician recruitment.
Okay, any further discussion to the amendment before we? I'm thinking maybe we will take care of physician recruitment altogether and then move to the next item on the list. Does that make sense? Rather than trying to keep track of everything? Okay, so if there's no further discussion, then we'll call the question on the amendment to the amendment. All those in favor? Oh, good question. Yes.
Through the chair, so procedural bylaw, if we have a recorded vote, I will ask all the members in favor to please raise their hand and leave their hands raised until I call your name. So all those in favor, please raise your hand. So we have Councillor Sokoli, Councillor Sless, Councillor McCreary, Mayor Davis, Councillor Bell, Councillor Samwell, Councillor Oakley, Councillor Hunt, and Chair Kyle. Through the chair, that carries on a recorded vote of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. All those opposed? Councillor Chambers and Mayor Bailey. 9-2 carries.
Okay. Yes. Okay, so now we need to vote on the amendment as amended. So is there any further discussion about that before we call the vote? Councillor Oakley.
Just as a point of clarification, the amendment is that rather than postponing it, we're removing it entirely. Just one last clarification there. Plus the recusing and all that good stuff. Okay.
Any further discussion? Okay, we will call the question then, and it will be a recorded vote again.
All those in favor for the amendment as amended, please raise your hand and leave your hand raised. Councillor Sokoli, Councillor Sless, Councillor McCurry, Councillor Chambers, Mayor Davis, Councillor Samwell, Councillor Hunt, Chair Kyle. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Oh, I apologize. Were you in favor, Mayor Bailey? Yep. Mayor Bailey in favor. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Councillor Bell and Councillor Oakley. The motion carries on a recorded vote.
Okay, so that takes care of physician recruitment. So discussion is open for any of the other items on this list. If anyone has one pressing, otherwise we can, I guess, start at the top and work our way down. But yes, open for discussion. Councillor Sokoli.
All right, I'll jump right into this one. Intimate partner violence, gender-based violence being added to here. I just want to make sure I'm following the history of this correctly, because it's not totally sitting right with me being added here at this point. So this city council approved this initiative, and we've gone through the various avenues, and we're making some headway here. The county approved it. Then in the budget, they stripped the funding that they had approved. And then from my understanding, at that point, I had some conversation with some counselors and said, why don't you bring it here to joint services? Maybe we can work together, and that way you guys can contribute to this very important cause. Since that conversation, then it came back to council in the county. Funding was then approved again right before it was brought here. And now I'm under the understanding that the city is we're asking the city to pay 70% of the funding for this. Is this how this is working? I would like to hear from some individuals. I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Also, the city does a lot of funding already on its own. I'm not sure if we really need to get into that. And I see that we have CAO Hutchings here, and maybe you can outline for us some of the funding initiatives that came out of our actionable steps for intimate partner violence and gender-based violence action plan. I know that we identified a $2 million shortfall. I know that We've applied for some grants from the Canadian government to help close that gap there. Can you indicate for us, CAO Hutchings, sort of what we're doing on that back end there?
Just checking, see if this is working. Okay, thank you. So there's two questions there. One was for the general committee, but one was directly to me. So I'll answer the one directly to me. The federal government has announced funding for intimate partnered violence in the tune of $165 million to the province of Ontario. The province of Ontario is coming up with matching that, so about $325 million, the tune of $18 million this year and $47 million thereafter for 3 years. The city of Brantford has been involved with a number of community agencies to create a community action plan, which basically says the city of Brantford and the county of Brant fall $2 million short and are applying for that $2 million for this region, for this area. The city, to your specific, so that's on the global point, and I think that we can't lose that. There's on this area needs approximately $2 million in funding, which the plan calls for and asks the federal and provincial government to do. The last 2 years, the city of Brantford has funded $63,000 to the Sexual Assault Center, Willowbridge, Nova Vita, and Victim Services. Of that, most of that is from our casino monies. $35,000 in addition to that has been funded to Victim Service and Nova Vita outside of our casino monies through our levy program, which is an old outstanding grant from many, many years ago. And as well as Nova Vita receives another $300,000, which is separate. It's for shelter funds for the shelter program as well.
Allison, did you want to jump in on my other questions there?
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair. You're correct that there was funding that was recently approved through our council. It is short-term funding intended just for this year, and in other words, stopgap funding. The intention of bringing it forward to this committee for consideration was for how this is going to be handled on a regional basis ongoing beyond 2024. My understanding of this committee is that it's a matter of discussion in terms of if this is a topic that this committee would like to address. There's no suggestion of how that would work moving forward and contained in the report. So it's certainly within this committee's purview if they did not want to work on this moving forward.
Okay, my concerns specifically are how it's addressed in the appendix that's attached to this, and it basically says we don't have funding budgeted for this, and now it's here, and that when it was originally approved, it was approved under the purview that it would be flipped over here. So I just need to know in no uncertain terms that this is not going to be looking for us to fund anything jointly.
Through you, Madam Chair, the suggestion is that the funding that was approved by the county is a stopgap measure for 2024. It is not permanent ongoing funding. Therefore, the decision for the committee is whether it's a joint service that the city and county would like to consider moving beyond 2024 and more permanent sustainable funding.
Mayor Davis.
Yeah, so we've been at the city. This has been an important priority for us, and that in particular is funding these kinds of agencies that address this issue of intimate partner violence, which unfortunately is an ongoing problem over several decades. And so despite the fact that it became an issue provincially, it was something that we do quite regularly. And the way we do it at the city is different than the county. We don't build it into our budget. We allocate, it's all just slightly short of $1 million from the casino proceeds we receive. We send it over to the Brant Community Foundation, and they then take grant applications and disperse the money following the needs of the community rather than what the political dictates may be. And through that program, there has been regular funding of organizations that were outlined by Mr. Hutchings. So I don't quite see why. And I can see each municipality approaches this differently. and funds it differently. So I don't really see how this would be an issue that the city and the county would deal with jointly. I mean, we each deal with it separately. We have our different ways of dealing with it. I think that in our own ways and with our own procedural and funding mechanisms, we're addressing the issue. Also, it's also interesting what the province and the feds are doing. And that's a large sum of money that they're allocating towards this intimate partner violence. And we're about 1% of the population of Ontario in this region. And if it's $359 million and they do it pro rata, it could well be that there could be $2 to $3 million coming into this region to deal with that issue, to be seen or to be determined. And so it seems a bit premature as well to deal with it until the province and the feds has spelled out clearly how they're going to be allocating that funding to this, really important issue that, unfortunately, year after year after year, we continue to deal with. But if anything, we have to redouble our efforts. And so, but so long and short of my perspective is we're addressing it at the city in our way and the way we deal with it. And the way you deal with it in the county, I think, is much separate. I'm not sure how synergy comes out of that in terms of process and procedure.
Okay, I believe I saw Councillor Chambers. No? Okay, so we'll go to Councillor Hunt and then Councillor Oakley.
Yeah, so first of all, this has not been added, so it requires a 2/3 vote to add it. But my comments would be that I believe it's outside the mandate of a joint shared services, which is what the mandate of this committee is. I don't believe it's the mandate of this committee to fund any not-for-profit agencies. I spent my life for several years as executive director of a large not-for-profit, and I know that we continually, those agencies continually look for funding, such as what has been offered specifically for these types of agencies. So I don't think we really need to belabor the point, because in my view, adding this would be totally outside the mandate of this committee.
Councillor Oakley?
Through the chair, just my 2 cents on this. I agree that it's a regional issue, and that's why I think it needs a regional lens for us to address and look into. The county did address funding as a stopgap measure. I don't think the intent is that we're hoping that the city of Brantford just foots the bill for some of what we're doing, but rather that we look at what we're doing, what you're doing, and see if we can't find efficiencies in there and how we're helping fund these non-for-profits, which are wildly underfunded. Even just from the mandate of one of our other joint committees, social services, there's a lot of overlap between what these service providers provide and what our social services provide, and it's typically a lot more effective for us to provide help to these nonprofits than funding it directly. So, in my view, I think there would be value in us having some joint conversation in regards to this topic through this committee.
Councillor Sicoli?
This is a topic that falls very near and dear to my heart, and it's a project that I've been working on intently at the city. And much like the county's views on physician recruitment, this is something that we sort of already have the ball rolling on. And we have a lot of opportunity ahead of us, and we have some opportunity to get some major funding and close some gaps. So I would rather see the City of Brantford staff focus on seeing through the initiatives that we've already started, and not be bogged down by red tape and bureaucracy and having to go back and forth between the council and the county and coming to, like, if we work together, it just puts up more barriers, unfortunately. And since we have a lot of money on the line here, I'm not going to be supporting adding this today.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Oakley told the story as I would have told it. I think this is a social issue. I think it falls firmly in the area of our Social Services Committee. I know it doesn't fall in the mandate, but that doesn't mean you can't change the mandate. So it is well within our power tackle a common problem in a common way, like we tackle housing, like we tackle child and family services, like we tackle homelessness. We tackle it together. It is not a city problem or a county problem. It is a common problem. And if we are serious about working together, this is one of the obvious areas in my mind that we work together. My solution to that would be that we change the mandate of social services, and it's very clear how the funding falls through in that respect. We pay our share, city pays its share.
Councillor McCreary?
Madam Chair, thank you very much. If you look at the name of the committee, it's the Shared Services Committee, not the Shared Grants Committee. Corporation of the City of Brantford devotes its fair share to support charities and NPOs which cross borders. I think we've heard a bit about the kind of money we invest in doing that. Again, you know, without seeming heavy-handed, I don't know what kind of coin the county contributes to supporting these organizations, but perhaps if the county devoted that kind of resources that the city has, rather than wanting the city to, you know, to take a greater lion's share and change mandates, which are quite succinct and brief and very specifically given to us by province of Ontario, that's something the county can undertake on its own basis. But you know, I think that's something that really needs to come off this list. It's superfluous to what the original intent was, and you know, we're talking about services we provide to our constituents as a municipality, as core services primarily. This is not one of them.
Councillor Chambers?
Just to clarify one thing, it was never the county's desire for the city to fund the county's share. That wasn't it. We do it differently. You do it grants. We put $250,000 into the organizations for them to hire staff to serve the county residents. But I think, going back to what Councillor Bell said, I think the reason that we thought that it might be a good idea to put it as a discussion topic is that, as Councillor Bell suggested, it may be better to have a regional strategy, and that may be even better for the organizations if that be the case. But just to clarify, we're not asking for 70% of what we spent. That was never even considered, so that let's not go down that road.
Any further discussion on this one? Motion? Okay, so according to the clerk here, we would be calling a vote in order to add it to the list. And I will do that, but before we do that, I think I would just echo the comments of some of my fellow councillors in that our intention with bringing this to this group was that we have made a commitment of over $250,000 for this year to support those organizations because they are providing services to our county residents. And because those services, many of them are located in the city of Brantford, we felt that it made sense to see if we could work together to come up with a more stable funding stream for those organizations to continue that work. Because the reality is, if those organizations don't have that money, there is no service for that particular area of need. And yeah, so it was to bring it here for discussion. So we'll call the vote on whether or not we would like to add that to the list. Again, it's just for discussion purposes. It wouldn't be necessarily a request for funding from the city necessarily, but more request to add it so that we could have some discussions, some real discussions about whether or not there's a path forward for that. So we will call the vote. I believe it will be a recorded vote again. So I will turn it over to Chris to run that.
Yeah, so through the chair, it's a vote to add it to the mandate, which requires 2/3. So all those in favor, please raise your hand until I call your name. Councillor Bell, yes. Councillor Oakley, yes. Mayor Bailey, yes. Councillor Kyle, yes. Members opposed? Councillor Sokoli, Sless, McCreary, Mayor Davis, Councillor Chambers, Councillor Samwell, and Councillor Hunt. The motion is lost on recorded vote of 5 to 6. In order to get 2/3, we needed 8.
Okay, so carrying on here, are there other items on this list from groupings A, B, or C that folks would like to discuss? Councillor Sokoli.
All right, let's talk transportation for a minute, and transit. This one, when I saw this being removed from the mandate, I understand that there's perhaps some committee allegedly doing something, but this topic is arguably one of the biggest issues for many of the residents of both the city and the county. And moving people between our communities is crucial for both of our futures, for both of our future growth. Removing this feels a little bit like a slap in the face to all of the residents who live in the county and work in the city, to the ambulance drivers who are trying to pick up a resident in the county and get to BGH located in the city. A lot of people who live in the county work in the city. As we know, 30% of the users of the Wayne Gretzky Center are from the county. There are a lot of synchronicities between our communities, and providing seamless transit, whether that be bus or transportation routes, is so crucial. And I would think this would be one of the hot items that we would want to discuss. So seeing this removed really blew my mind. At the end of the day, the constituents that we all represent, they don't respect the boundaries that you and I do around this table. They want to be able to move back and forth as seamlessly as possible. This topic is way too important for us to let fizzle and to be removed in any which way. And not only do I think that it needs to be discussed, I've brought very specific routes that the city is looking at, or that I'm looking at. And I will share these routes with everybody, but I will be bringing an amendment that we specifically look at these routes. I want to know, are we going to work together on this, or are we not? Much like physician recruitment, let's make some hard decisions today. Are we going to, or are we not? So I'm going to pass along some very specific routes, and as well, it's an amendment that I'll be bringing forward. I'm going to take that. I'll take one to Jennifer, actually. There you go. Now these routes, specifically the extension of Shellard Lane from the city boundary to Rest Acres Road. This is going to help feed highway access and to help those residents, especially in southern Paris, get into West Brant to do some shopping. It's going to help the individuals from West Brant to jut out to Rest Acres to access the highway. We need city collaboration on that because it cuts over county property. The extension of Conklin Road to the 403 along Phelps, the County Road 18, most people would know this as the Ring Road. This is something that's been discussed over and over again. It'll help move people around the city boundaries through the county. We want to know, is the county interested in working with us on that, creating that Ring Road? We're looking for alternate routes for the extension of, it's called the West Brant Arterial Road, and it goes, basically it was formerly known as the Oak Park Road Extension. I'm looking to move that over and used Forest Road to cut up to Oak Park Road so that we can have access to the highway from West Brant to Oak Park Road Extension. We need to know if the city's interested in working with us on that, because it would use some county, or the county, sorry. Is the county interested in working with us on that? Because it would utilize county lands. So you see here the amendment that I'm looking to bring forward today. I look forward to the discussion.
Okay, we're gonna go to Allison first, to provide a bit of context on her decision of where she put it, and then we'll go to Councillor Chambers.
Thank you through you, Madam Chair. The report does not suggest that we do not work on this. The report actually suggests that we already are working on this, and therefore direction has already been given to staff.
Councillor Chambers?
Just, again, the CEO said we are looking at this, but the issue and the problem arises in how it's paid for. And you can extend out of the city in certain areas, but I live on the 13th or the 11th concession in the bottom corner of the township, and all my neighbors, if we extend the transportation, we have to pay for it, but we certainly will not get benefit of it. And if you extend that throughout the whole county, geographically, in fairness to the people that are paying the bills, many of the people that would have to pay the bill would not have the service. And that has always been the problem with public transportation in rural areas. The geography and the distance becomes uneconomical for the service that's provided. And it's a simple matter of who pays and how much they pay and whether they should pay or not.
Councillor Sicoli?
I should say, if the city is willing to pay that, come on out to the 13th concession, I'll hop on your bus.
Yeah, it's one thing for to have staff chatting in the background, but we have decision makers in this room, and we have the ability to say that this is or isn't something that we want to look at. I haven't seen anything come forward regarding us work together, and has anybody in this room ever seen a report that's come from these staff persons working together on, and granted I haven't been around that long, but like I've never seen that come forward. So where is it going? I want to have the discussion today, and maybe it's best if I move this first so that we can actually have it on the floor for discussion. So I'm adding clause E, that council directs staff to move the transportation item from group A to group B with a reporting timeline of October 2024. This item shall include, but not be limited to, consideration of the following. 1, the extension of Shellard Lane from the city boundary to Rest Acres Road. 2, the extension of Conklin Road to the 403 along Phelps Road / County Road 18 and Garden Avenue. And 3, that alternate routes for the extension of the Brantford Southern Access Corridor from the southerly terminus of Oak Park Road through and to Forest Road. Looking for a seconder.
Councillor Bell? Okay, I think I saw Councillor McCreary.
Chair, thank you very much. My understanding is that the removal of the Clause A items means that this never comes back to this committee for further review. And I'm not sure why that's a recommendation that staff then come direct to council, because it's a work item of this committee, and I think that what this committee gives direction on should come back here for an interim review. So I really don't agree with removing any of these from the work plan of this organization. I think they all should come back here for our review at some point, so this committee can then comment further on what this committee has asked for, which then can go to the respective councils. So I support this amendment, and I'm glad to see that there's an indication of county support, although I hear what my friend to my left here is saying. Much as I don't like to pay the county's share of physician recruitment, I can appreciate why our county friends wouldn't want to pay for our roads. So I support that, but I would like to have that further discussion when this amendment hopefully carries about removing all these items from our work plan.
Okay, I think I saw Councillor Hunt.
So through you to staff, I'm gonna apologize again, because I know Mr. Hutchings is directly behind me, but I'm wondering if we can get a comment on the work that's being done at the staff level from the standpoint of a joint committee with two master transportation plans. You know, I'm sure that's going to be a lot to sort out. And yes, has the committee been struck? And if it is a staff committee, what the terms of reference are? And I apologize.
Okay. Counselor, it's rude to talk to the back of your head, so I'll do two things. I'll talk very quickly, but I also have Commissioner Hans on the call, so he can talk to you directly when he comes on the screen, so you don't have to move. But I will say something that I think it's important for staff from a staff perspective. I know it's former council in the room right now, but we had this discussion a lot last term where we struggle with this because for staff to do anything, there has to be political will, to be quite frank. We can talk all we want, but we also have to get direction from our leaders to make sure we can continue those discussions. So we had a lot of trouble with that last term of council. And staff have continued to talk, and Mr. Hans is on the call, and he can give you details of those discussions, but we can only take it so far without political direction.
Through the chair, if I can just add to Councillor Hunt's question, or to Councillor Hunt, the two TMPs that have been completed, there is a staff group from both public works departments that are discussing how those two, in terms of the timing, match for any upgrades to the roadways, and just to the committee as a whole. There, we are planning to bring a report to City of Brantford Council in just a couple of weeks on the West Arterial and all the work that has gone into the alternate locations, or alternate options in terms of how to move traffic throughout the city. And some of them do include the county roadways. We have quarterly meetings with Cameron Brandt's leadership team to discuss these projects, as well as some of the alternatives that we will be presenting in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Indy. So I guess I'm wondering if this should stay on our list with those reports to come.
Okay, I saw Mayor Davis first, then Councillor Celeste, and then Councillor Bell.
Yeah, I read this motion as an attempt to be, really transparent with the county and getting to the essence of something that's extremely important to us in the city, and that, of course, is our road system and the various options we have to improve it. But I know it's that same issue is just as important here in the county, because you're experiencing. I saw it here in Paris as I was coming here today. You're experiencing the very kind of same issues. And I think to really solve this problem, for both of us to solve it, both the city and county, we have to take some kind of radical, bold departures. You've heard from the city and city staff that it's hard for staff to do that, to contemplate that, unless they know there's political will to do it. And so this is an attempt to be what we see, and from the city perspective, routes that could help us deal with the issues we have, but clearly they flow through the county to a large degree, these options. If they were to be considered as something of a point of discussion between the city and county, talking about the point raised by Councilor Chamber, I don't think the city would expect the county to pay all the maintenance for a road that in large degree serves city residents, and that could well be part of the discussion, which is how that is to be shared. But this, as I said, this is an attempt, I believe, to let's decide, do we want to take bold action? And if then we'd have to do things like this, and there may be kind of bold action that you might in the county want to consider that the city would be joining in on. I think this is an attempt to gauge, is there a political will to do that? And I understand from the county representatives, if the will's not there and you prefer that we each work on on the road systems we have and dealing with our traffic issues, basically on our own, and staff trying to connect us on the boundaries as best as possible. Is there this appetite or not? And this is in no way, if the county should decide, county members know this is not something that the county would really want to do. I'd understand that completely. I would not in any way be critical, but let's put it on this is putting it on the table to be clear, to be transparent. Do we have an appetite for it or not?
Okay, Councillor Sluss.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it concerns me that folks are quite happy to deflect and let it go to staff, and hopefully they can somehow make it all go away or make it better or make a decision on it, and they can't. It's unfair to dump that in somebody's lap that doesn't have the capacity or the authority to make decisions on it. That I think that's my concern, why it was being taken off, because a staff group is working on it. I'm being told they are. How often do they meet? Do they meet every week? It's a very important issue.
Again, through Madam Chair, Mr. Hans just said they meet quarterly.
So every 3 months, we get together and see if anything moved.
Yes.
Okay, has anything moved?
Chair, to Councillor Slush, so there's a couple of items that we have moved forward, including the household housing waste, which we need to bring forward to our council. But there have been a lot of discussions about transit and transportation, including setting up meetings. Because of the meetings that we have, we take actions away and try to meet regarding transit needs, whether it's in Paris or Kingsville. And we're also in early discussions about sports and recreation and shared facilities. But again, all of those decisions would be brought to either this committee or our councils, depending on the decision in terms of how we want to move forward with it. But a lot of that work was based around the original list from this committee. So we put that onto our agenda so that both staff know what we want to do and how we want to move it forward.
Okay.
To the point, Councillor. Yep. On the agenda, though, is nothing has moved ahead on the transportation issue. Mr. Hans talked about some other matters. Nothing has moved ahead on the transportation issue because it would call for crossing lines, boundaries between the city and the county.
Right, but isn't that the whole idea of having the discussion? Is to be able to cross those lines, that they can cross, we can cross, and we can mutually benefit from it. It sounds from what Mr. Hans just said that the agenda he's working from has got a myriad of items to deal with, not just transportation. And we're talking just about transportation here, not about recreation and the whole gamut. So I think we need somebody to focus in on exactly what the problem is. And I don't think dumping it off on somebody that can't make a decision on it is the appropriate course to take. I think this is the group that was put together to deal with those things, and I think we should be. Nicholsworth.
Okay, so we're gonna go to Councillor Bell in a second, but before we do that, I'm gonna flip it over to Allison, the county CAO, just for her perspective as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking specifically to transit, I can't speak for the city, but I know that we report on transit on a monthly basis to our council, and we have reported that there is a proposal coming forward from the joint working group. We expect that to come forward in June as to how expanded transit for fixed route coming from the city would work, and how expanding microtransit into the city conversely would also work. And that proposal would come forward to our council. Our council's been informed of that timeline and by our staff. So I can only speak to that. Certainly staff are not in a position to make those final decisions as with anything else. But our council has been informed of when and how that would come forward.
Okay, so now we'll go to Councillor Bell, and then I think I saw Councillor Oakley and Councillor Samwell.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think we're sort of flipping between public transport and transportation, but I think what Councillor Zaccoli has put forward, in principle, I'm fully supportive of. A lot of people that live in the county work in the city. They would benefit greatly from improved access and transportation. So I think this is a limited list. I think I could probably add to this, but I think you've got the not limited to clause in there, so I'm happy with that. but I think our residents would expect that we work together, particularly for those people that do cross the boundary every day, multiple times. Many of us go across the boundary not just for working, but for shopping, for recreation. So I think if we can improve the transportation links between us, we should. But I thought, and maybe I'm wrong, I thought the fact that we already had a team working on this, that was sufficient, that we would get reports back, and that collectively each council would contribute. I didn't think this committee needed to do any more to make sure we were actually talking about it and it was moving forward, and I think we are.
So apparently Councillor Oakley is going to be very chivalrous, and we're going to go to Councillor Samwell first and then Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I guess I just wanted to say that I really find it very imperative that we keep transportation, as well as when the time is right, I'd like to move an amendment to put transit back on the list as well instead of removing that. But I think one of the things that we can be most effective at and really show some progress here is the transportation piece and the transit piece. And I think that we do need to have that come to this committee, because we are the ones that are going to be making the decisions, and having it come here first and be endorsed by this committee would help it along at the council tables as well. Thank you. Councillor Oakley.
Through the chair, I do largely agree with what's being said around the table, that transportation and transit is a major issue here. I think from my understanding of the initial report and the conversation we had at our own council chamber was that the county of Brant's a third of the size of the city of Brantford and has even less than a third of the staff. I think part of the concern here is overburdening our county staff. So with some of these issues where we're already in theory making progress and we have staff working together, I think that was the idea of narrowing our focus here. But that being said, and what I've gotten the impression of around the table is if we here want to have a lot more of those sort of informal guiding conversations to eventually then give to staff, and we're not going to cause a significant amount of additional staff burden, then I absolutely would support continuing to have transportation and eventually transit on this. I mean, as was mentioned here today, everyone saw the traffic as they were trying to get here. Paris has needed a bridge for a very long time, and from what I hear from our MPP, the city of Brantford also could potentially benefit from projects like that as well. So I would be in favor of continuing to have this as part of the mandate of the committee, as long as we're ensuring that we're not overburdening our staff complement.
So we have Councillor Sluss, Councillor Sequoia, then Councillor Chambers. But before we do that, Allison, can you just quickly comment on the overburdening of staff piece, just to make sure that that wouldn't cause issue?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I don't think it is going to overburden staff, as it's something we're already working on. Again, it was a matter of how the reporting is going to happen. Really, it's a procedural issue, because the topic is already being worked on jointly.
Okay, so now we'll go to Councillor Sluss.
Thank you. I'd like to hear the mayor of the county's thoughts on this.
I'm not sure what you want me to, through the chair, I'm not sure what you want me to say. I'm listening to everything that's going on the table. I had no idea that this was what this committee was going to be doing. I already feel like it's I don't know. I'm just receiving everything as information. The routes that we're going are not the way I thought we were going to go. It's not the mandate that I thought this committee had. It's why I'm not in the room tonight. It's because I just feel so far removed from these conversations, because we know what we're doing in the county as far as the priorities. And I just feel that we're all making comments on things we don't know, everything about. We in the county know about side roads and traffic studies, and we know all about Cockshut Road, and we know all about County Road 18. And I just feel that these comments are being so flippant that and I understand that it's just the city's view on things, but it's very disheartening for me to listen to ideas from the city when we worked so hard on being where we are in the progress of moving forward. So I'm, you know what? I don't have an opinion on the roads thing because I've already said publicly that the county doesn't work like the city. The county wants to go away from the center of the city. We want to go to Woodstock. We want to go to Cambridge. Our transportation wants to go different places. The city is looking to bring people from the county into the city. We're looking to bring people other places. So it's not nearly as simple as this committee has made it seem tonight. And I'm a little disappointed. I'm a little disappointed that that's how I feel. But I that's how I feel. I'm sorry. I don't think everyone in the room has the same amount of information on the subjects. We're just sort of listing through like a buffet, and it's not the way I feel. I think that we've done a lot of work behind the scenes, and I'm very disappointed. That's all.
I think both municipalities are struggling with the abundance of traffic in both communities. And I think this is an attempt to have a look at that and see how we can make it better in both communities. I don't think it's anything to do with the city trying to tell the county to do how they should do work. And it's not the county telling the city how we should be running our business. I think it's two groups that have a common problem, and we're just trying to solve it, look at it, and see if there's a way of working together to make both our communities more easily, I guess, transported around their communities. And I think that's the intent. It's not to say that Woodstock doesn't exist or that Cambridge doesn't exist. That's got nothing to do with nothing. What we're talking about is gridlock in both cities and how do we overcome it as two partners working together. That's how I see it.
Okay, we're gonna go to Councillor Sicoli, then Councillor Chambers, then I think I saw Mayor Davis.
Yes, thank you. And whether Mayor Bailey wants people to come to the city or not, they are coming. And they are using the same roadways. And I have some questions here. Like we got together, we put together this awesome list. I need to know, will the county come to these discussions in good faith if we add this on here? Like, we had a fulsome list, and then all of a sudden, without us asking for it, we have a much, much shorter list with everything important removed from it. And now we're just slowly amending things back on, and I have some question on whether or not the county councilors want to have fulsome discussions in good faith moving forward. Are you going to be participating in that? Are you going to be dragging us along, and then we're going to be back to square one 2 years from now? I need to know those answers. Is the county going to want to get into expropriating land so that we can build these roadways? Are you interested in taking that on? It is going to be a burden on staff. Absolutely. So I don't want this to be where these rose-colored glasses sitting in this room talking about, oh, we can do it, we can do everything, kumbaya. This is real discussion, and the minutia of what we're talking about today is exactly what I envisioned for this committee. Like, let's break down the walls. Let's have some very candid conversation on what we're willing to bring to the table. What do we want to work on? And let's just be really real with each other and either put our money where our mouth is and work together, or let's cut each other loose in some regards in some topics, right? So I do want the county councilors here tonight, as well as Mayor Bailey, to have a really good thought about what I'm bringing forward here, because this will be burden. There will be some staff burden related to this. There will be a lot of expropriating of lands if we get to that point. That's what we're putting on the table here. And I just want to know, do you want to do this with us, or should we go a different path? That's all. Thanks.
Okay, I think we're going next to Councillor Chambers, and then Mayor Davis, and then Councillor Samwell, right? And then Councillor McCreary.
Again, I like the term "putting your money where your mouth is." Mayor Davis may remember back when he was on council many years ago, there used to be a suburban road classification where the city paid the county funds for maintaining county roads that were used by the city. And as time went on, that got taken away, and at the city's request, I might add. So maybe things like that can be looked at. And Mayor Davis also suggested that perhaps the city can fund in a suburban road manner, and maybe that would help the county in their prioritization. I don't know whether you're paying attention to what I'm saying or not, but it may help the county prioritize its road programs with the limited funds we have to maintain our entire road system. And that's, I'll go back to the point that it's a huge county, and I've got people in my ward living on gravel roads and dirt roads, and if you could drive down them now, it's not nice. So to convince them to assist the city residents coming out and the county residents coming in on certain roads that are perhaps suburban roads, it may be an easy way to convince the people that are living on gravel roads that have to pay for this, that if the city is willing to pay more to extend Conklin Road, for example, and I agree that it needs to be extended, and coming out from, I drove it, I can't think of the name right now, but Scheller's Lane, those kind of roads, yeah, I agree, they're substandard. You come to the city line and it's different. But the reason for that is the county can't afford to make suburban roads when they have people living on gravel roads that have to pay for it. So it's a matter of priorities, funding, and if the city wants to prioritize it in terms of providing funding to the county, maybe that can help me explain to my residents and the residents in the rural areas in the north, east, south, and west that these roads that are your priority should be their priority as well. But right now, I'll be honest with you, they're not.
Okay, Mayor Davis.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat what I said, but maybe I can better phrase what I said before. And you know, it's my concern for both the city and the county on this issue of traffic, which is a real bedeviling issue for both of us. The incremental ad hoc piecemeal approach, which staff really, that's what they're doing right now, right? We each have our own master transportation plans, and it's really what they're trying to do is figure out when those plans intersect, what can be done on an incremental, really lowbrow horizon type approach. What can be done to make those two plans work better? This resolution speaks more than that. This resolution is saying that approach, we know it's not going to work for us. This really, if I put this in the context, it's trying to create a regional road system without a region. And you only get that through true sharing and working together and trying to find innovative, bold approaches. Not just to serve city residents as they come in and out of the city, crossing through lands that are in the county of Brant, but also trying to help the county of Brant with some of their issues. And I think we can do that if we're creating this truly regional road network that serves the entire region. Staff don't want to do that right now because they don't feel they got the political will behind them to do it. Will it be a daunting task? No question. Do I think that we're up for it if our staff are up to doing it? I think they would be if we tell them as politicians, we want you to do it. Or at least certainly talk seriously about whether we can do it, right? Because that's what this is. This is giving staff the confidence, a vote of confidence for them to look at truly innovative approaches to this regional road problem that we have all across this area.
Excuse me, Councillor Samwa.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I guess what I wanted to say is I wanted to kind of go back to something that Councillor Sluss had said, that it really is about having the discussion. I think that there's value in what Councillor Bell said about how he could add to the list. There's lots of things to be added, and the conversations about how it'll be paid for. I think the important part is that we all come to the table and value all of the opinions around the table and look at how we can work together. And I think that the biggest and most important piece of this is that at some point we're going to have a conversation about transportation, because at the end of the day we need to get people moving for both the citizens of the city and the council. Or you know what I meant.
We do. Councillor McCreary, I believe, is next.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. I shall try not to be flippant. It's always my goal not to be flippant. So let me say this, okay? Were I a county councillor, I would have considerable trepidation about this because I think Councillor Chambers is absolutely correct. I mean, I am a city councillor, but I'm not so sure that if I were a county councillor, I wouldn't say to the city of Brantford, solve your own problems within your own boundaries. You could have done that in prior terms. And why should I be responsible for solving your transportation problems when you could have done it yourself and still can do it yourselves? That's how I would look at this if I were a county councillor, but I'm not. I'm a city councillor. But I think what's before us, the amendment before us, clarifies the issue crystal clear. It will allow our staffs, respective staffs, to participate in an exercise to pursue this, and can put aside all other transportation questions to pursue this one. And when this one has been pursued, if it's acceptable to both councils, then we could move on to looking at another problem in the transportation field. So I think the clarity this offers is important. I think it synthesizes, it doesn't send our folks away tail chasing, only to come back and be kicked in that tail by a council who will not accept what they have done. So I would urge everybody to vote according to their conscience of their community, of their municipality, and then we decide whether to go forward with this or not, and then we make a decision today, which will be a good decision regardless.
Okay, on that note, are there any other burning questions or comments regarding this clause E before we vote? Seeing none.
This requires a 2/3 vote to be added.
I believe, no, this,
Oh.
the clerk has said no, so I'm going to turn it over to him to run our recorded vote.
Through the chair, so all those in favor for the amendment to add clause E, please raise your hand and leave your hand raised until I call your name. Councillor Sokoli, Query, Mayor Davis, Councillor Bell, Councillor Samwell, Councillor Oakley, sorry the suns are in my eyes, Councillor Hunt, Chair Kyle. Members opposed, please raise your hand. Councillor Chambers and Mayor Bailey. The amendment carries.
Okay. Councillor Bell, what have you got for us next?
Yeah, well, just to change topics. The new Brantford General Hospital build.
Point of order, did we deal with, or we concluded with that item with having voted on the amendment?
I believe now that becomes part of what will, like the A, B, C, D. I'll let.
Yeah, through the chair, so that amendment was to add clause E to the main motion. Whether or not the committee is done with the transportation item is up to the committee, I guess.
Councillor McCree?
Thank you. So we've amended something that we then are poised to remove from the plate of this committee. And I believe that we should have what is prepared by the staff come back to this committee at some point and not taken off our plates. I appreciate hearing other opinions on that.
I thought we just agreed to that.
Through the chair, that amendment was to include transportation in the mandate.
I'm sorry, yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so over to Councillor Bell.
Okay, new Brantford General Hospital build. We are still waiting for an update on the plans that the BCHS are going to go forward with. When we last heard from them, we were told that the cost of building a new hospital would be around $2.5 billion, and it was going to be located across the road from the existing hospital. Since then, in various conversations I've had with various people, that $2.5 billion seems to have gone to $3.5 billion. The existing hospital is in greater disrepair than we had ever thought, and some of us, I think probably all of us, have had the opportunity to visit now. But what troubles me most is varying approaches to how much we think we are going to have to pay for this and how we are going to afford it. In various communications I've seen, it appears that the city has a different view from the county about how much they're going to have to pay. Certainly, if we take $3.5 billion and we take the 10% construction cost to the community and 15% in fixtures, fittings, and equipment to the community, that comes around about $1 billion, more or less, of which if we take our 28%, that's $280 million. We can't afford it, no matter what we do, without putting a huge burden on our community. So at the last budget round, we actually basically said, we're not actually going to contribute to our reserve fund. It was a statement to say we need to actually review the funding model, but I'd like to think that we would move collectively forward, because this is not just a city or a county problem, it's a community problem. We serve all the community between us. It's actually 6 nations that come to think of it, and they'll be a part of it. I would like to think that we could actually work together as 2 councils with BCHS and with anybody else that wants to work together with us to go forward in a uniform way, so that we're not picked off one by one, and that we don't actually cause the provincial government to turn away from us and direct money elsewhere because they don't think we understand what's going on or are not willing to contribute. So I would think this is actually probably the most important thing we can be working on.
Okay, so we're going to go to Councillor Hunt, then Councillor Sless, and then Councillor Samwell, and then Mayor Davis.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Kyle. This is another one that I looked at and considered carefully, and I think this is outside the mandate of this committee. We're talking about the Hospital Foundation likely having to strike a major community capital campaign in order for the community, including council, and but we're talking about something that is well above what either one of our councils are going to be able to do. So while at the city we have started to invest in a fund that would potentially raise a portion of that, but the Hospital Foundation itself is going to have to embark on a massive capital campaign that is outside the parameters of the work that we would be doing. Certainly city and county council are going to be involved in that, but I don't believe that this particular item belongs at this committee for that reason, because we would be working together on something that's way above what we're going to be able to accomplish at any kind of municipal government level. This is going to be a massive community capital campaign that's going to have to be conducted likely by the Hospital Foundation.
Okay, Councillor Sless.
Thank you. We're at, both communities are really in an unattainable situation. We can't control what a hospital costs, and we can't control what it costs to equip it. That's out of our bailiwick. That's the provincial government. They have a formula that they use, and they use it across the province. We're not special. Everybody gets treated the same way. Whether it's right or it's wrong is really irrelevant. The fact is, that's the way it is. We're dictated. We're a creature of the province, and they treat us how they treat us. And we really don't have a lot to say in that. The problem, I think, is if you start bucking the system and you start complaining to the province, we'll be off the list. Just forget it. We won't get a hospital. And if we do, it'll be 30 years from now instead of 8 or 10. So I understand your frustration, Councillor Bell. I do. I'm frustrated too. When it comes to funding, it sounds like a large number for you. It's an extremely large number for us, but it's relative. You're a smaller community with smaller bills and smaller income. We're a larger community with a larger population, larger income, but larger expenses. So it's all relative. What it costs you, it costs us in relative terms. So we're all in the same boat. Doing nothing, I think, other than try and create money is all we can do. If we go in there and start demanding less burden put on us from the province. As I said a minute ago, we'll tumble down to the bottom of that list and we'll be in big trouble. There's no question, we don't need a hospital in 8 or 10 years from now. We need a hospital now. And it's sad what people have to put up with. I'm sure we've all had experiences there where we say you can't get mad at the people that work there. They work with what they have, but they don't have enough. And that's the problem. And that's what we've been lobbying and lobbying and lobbying to correct. We finally got to the point where we're now on the list. We're recognized. They know we need it. They're starting to flow money for development, for planning, and all of those things. But that can be short-circuited by a stroke of the pen in Toronto. If they feel that somehow we're making hay with, I guess, what they're dictating for us to do, they don't want to hear bad things about themselves. And if we start doing that, we know where we're going to end up, because there's a pile of communities out there that want new hospitals, that won't be complaining. They'll do whatever they have to do to create the funds that are needed to be created to do what needs to be done. So I would be very reluctant. In fact, I wouldn't be reluctant. I wouldn't take on the province and say, you're gouging us. We can't afford it. Do something else. You pick up more of the bill. Whatever the solution is, I don't think is the solution. That's a solution to get kicked off the list. So I can't support going to the province and saying, give us a break, because you got 434 municipalities that would also like a break, and they're not going to get it, and neither are we.
Okay, Councillor Samwell was next, then Mayor Davis, and then Councillor McCreary.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I guess what I wanted to say is that obviously the hospital is very important to both of our communities. And if this was to add the committee, or add that onto here, to be finding ways how we can support that fundraising effort at the hospital and help move the initiative forward, I would be in support of that. But if it's to say to the province that we can't afford our 10%, that's not something that I think that we should be risking the outcome of. I think that we should be working towards together jointly to figure out a way that we can afford to do the 10% that's asked of us. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Davis.
Yeah, I think it does fall outside the scope of this committee, because the scope of this committee is to look at what we can do together in terms of providing municipal services, what we can do together to provide those kinds of services that municipalities provide more efficiently, more effectively. And that's really the mandate of this committee. That said, this is a very serious, critical issue for both our communities, and that is getting a new hospital, and a new hospital as soon as possible. The frustration for us, both municipalities, is we don't plan it, we don't build it. That's really a decision made between the province, the Ministry of Health, and the hospital board. Neither of us have representation on the hospital board. It's completely separate and independent of us. And I think what we need, what both communities need from the province and from the hospital, is that, yes, we heard about the stage 1 funding 2 years ago, which got us on the list of communities to get a new hospital. And yes, that happened, but what's happened since? There's a need for the hospital and the province to provide us with some clear indication what the timeline is, and what the likely cost is going to be, and what the amount of the 10% ask will be for the local municipalities. We're hearing different figures: 3 billion, 2 billion, 1 billion. These figures are all over the place, and those authorities, I think it's incumbent upon them, and I ask them, let's have some clarity. And actually, we're hoping we're going to have some, because we do have a hospital delegation coming to City Council later this month. Clearly, there's a need for that. And it may well be, if that clarity doesn't come in the very near future, maybe there will be a need for a standalone joint city-county committee to pressure, advocate, and lobby, not necessarily on the 10%, but on what is the plan, when is it going to be built, where is it going to be built, and what's the ask of us. I agree with Councillor Sluss that at this time, I think it would be a bad message to send that we want to advocate or lobby against the 10%. Because one, we don't really know what that 10% value is. And it does send a bad message to the province because that 10% requirement's been in place for like decades. It's not something the Ford government put in place. And there have been communities in the past that bucked paying 10% and they didn't get a new hospital. So that's the last thing I think we want to have happen here. So for all those reasons, I'm not going to vote for it, although I'm very sympathetic to Councillor Bell's frustration because I feel some of it as well. This is going to be an ongoing issue for both communities, for this region. We're going to have to deal with it in, I think, some pretty innovative ways. And we're going to stay the course right now at the city, and that is that we have set up a reserve, and over 18 months, we've got $8.5 million in there. I expect by the end of June, we'll have well over 10 million because we're going to put part of our surplus from last year into it. So we have a plan at the city that we think we can raise what we believe was going to be our requirement of 10% of $2 billion. But, clearly we need some clarity from the health authorities. Exactly what is it and when is it?
Okay, so we're gonna go to Councillor McCreary and then Councillor Oakley, and then if there's no one else, then we'll go back to Councillor Bell.
Chair, thank you. I agree with what's been said by other members of the Brantford contingent here today. Were I the Minister of Health, I would view this type of action as a demonstration of animus towards the provincial government, towards the health ministry, and thanks to some governance problems at the Brant County Health Unit, we've already hit their radar as being an organization that's not in tune with provincial goals. I don't think we can afford to take another crack at upsetting people at Queen's Park. Personalities are involved, and we don't need to get on somebody's blacklist and look at 20 years down the road instead of 10 for this. I would also urge people at this table and members of councils on both sides of the border to not take any unilateral action with respect to poking the bear or the hornet's nest. It's certainly a disservice to both communities if someone were to undertake that kind of action. As Mayor said, perhaps there may be a time in future when both councils will create an action plan to move forward our hospital. But at this point in time, the less said, the better, and let's just wait for that autonomous organization, autonomous like the health unit, I might add, to take the lead on this, and perhaps there'll be something conclusive that comes out of this in the next year or so. We certainly have an election that will be coming provincially, and that may be an opportunity to practically and sensibly lobby for a more conclusive outcome for Brant with respect to hospital bricks and mortar.
Okay, over to Councillor Oakley.
Through the chair, just to keep things brief, I would mirror Councillor Samuel's comments that I'd be more than happy to support putting this on the mandate of the committee if it was for joint advocacy and strategy for how to fundraise money, or as Mayor Davis suggested, with a joint advocacy board down the road. But in regards to pushing back on the 10%, while my personal belief is that it is a hard number to hit, that's what bodies like AMO and Roma are for, and not individual communities to raise their head and be the piece of grass that gets cut down. So I would be happy to support it if it was trying to figure out how we're going to pay for it, but if it's going to be how we figure how to lobby not to pay for it, I can't support that.
Okay, we'll go quickly to Councillor Sicoli before we go back to you, Councillor Bell.
Sure, and this might give you opportunity to respond, but while this might not be the mandate of this committee to explore this at this particular time, the actions of one party does affect the other right now, and I have some trepidation with that. I'm curious if the mayor Bailey has anything to contribute to this conversation. Do you plan on lobbying at this point? Is this where we're going with this?
I'm through the chair. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I've been to the last 3 meetings. I've been told that it's been changed to a new build. It keeps changing. I mean, the money doesn't change. It's just it's hard to raise money or to raise interest in something that we can't decide on. I find that I don't know any more about the hospital project that I did 18 months ago. So I don't know that it's a fair question to ask if I'm going to. Of course, I will help lobby. I mean, we need the money. We will have to find the money. But I don't know that we even know what we're shopping for. I don't think that we've made a decision. I
So
made a
do you
reference
plan
about
on
the old.
lobbying the government to reduce the 10%?
Well, why should they?
Why should they or shouldn't they?
Why should they reduce it when we haven't even really told them what we're going to do yet or what we want? And I don't think 10% is going to make the difference. I don't think the 10% is what's stopping us from doing anything coming up about the hospital. I think we have to sit down with the people that need to sit down and decide what it's going to be. Are we going to end up Frankensteining the hospital we have? Or are we going to build a new hospital? Are we going to build it now? Are we going to build it in 5 years, 10 years? There's all kinds of options that are open to us without just taking what we're talking about right now. We need to revisit it and talk about other options, in my opinion.
Okay. Councillor Chambers, very quickly before we go back to Councillor Bell.
Okay, this is the first time I've spoken to this issue, but so I'll try and be as quick as I can. I tend to agree with Councillor McCreary and the mayor. The important thing is that the county doesn't do something that the city doesn't like and pitch the whole project. We have to have a coordinated effort moving forward. That's the important thing, because we don't want to be going off in a different direction, because that is confusing to everybody. So Councillor McCreary is right when he says that we need to be consistent in our approach. The mayor is, I think, correct in that it doesn't necessarily have to be on this committee, but there has to be some kind of a connection as we move forward together. So if that's where we're going, whether it's taken off or left on, it needs to be marching in the same direction by both the county and the city.
Okay, back to Councillor Bell to wrap up discussion on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just read the words that are written here. It says, we will require a united and strategic approach. So that's what I want. I'm not particularly focusing on the cost, but there are 100 different things that we should be involved in. Let's go back to transportation, for example. Why would you build a hospital in the middle of a town which today already has its transportation problems in getting vehicles, patients, ambulances to that hospital? Simple question. We had that conversation about having transportation is something that we look at. There's just one element of it. But we need, if we're going to be the contributors in whatever form to this hospital, we should have an involvement in the design. And that includes where it is, how big it is, when it comes, how it's phased. We should be working with the hospital board to identify alternative locations. And as Mayor Bailey said, 1 week it's next door to the new hospital, the existing hospital. Next time you know, it's out in a greenfield site somewhere. We need to be much more intimately involved, to the degree that we should be represented, in my view, and this is my view, on the hospital board in some way or other to help shape where this hospital will be, to make sure it aligns with what the city is trying to do, what the county is trying to do in our 2 official plans. Just a comment on the foundation. I spoke to the chair of the foundation a few weeks ago, and I said, how much do you think you're going to have to raise in this campaign? She said $50 million. 50, maybe 5% of what we have to raise. It will not come from the foundation, at least that would not be my expectation. The burden is going to fall on the 2 municipalities. And Mayor Davis, you said, you kept talking about 10% of the construction cost. yeah, that's it. That's part one. Part two is 15% of the construction cost estimated as for the fixtures, fitting and equipment. So we need to be aligned when we're actually talking about how much it's going to cost the community. You're saying one thing, we've said another. It confuses our community, good and proper. It also, if it is 25% of 3.5 billion, it actually means we can do nothing in the county for the next 20 years if we have to raise $280 million. It just won't work. So that whilst it may be uncomfortable to have that conversation with the province, it's one that you have to have. So how can you bring $280 million down? Well, make it a smaller hospital, make it in a different place, phase it. There's all kinds of things that we can do, but we're not involved in that conversation, and yet we're expected to pay our contribution. But if you are going off in that direction as a city, and we're going off in that direction as a county, that's not going to be very helpful. So I'll go back to what was written there. It's looking for a unified and a strategic approach. It's working together on what I think is the biggest common problem that we share between us. So I think it's very important that we have it in the mandate of either this committee or in some other committee that we're jointly working together on.
Okay.
Sorry, I'd just like to add one more thing, if I may. Councillor McCreary did make the comment that somehow or other BCHU is bucking the trend and working against what the provincial government is saying. That is absolutely not the case. We are working to try and do what the provincial government is asking us to do, and that's to think about voluntary mergers. We're not working against that.
Sorry, Councillor Bell, that was, you just raised something that was in camera at the health unit. That is not a public discussion matter, sir.
Councillor McCreary, it is common knowledge that health units, and your councillor colleague, Councillor Seth, will tell you that.
I'm not interested in arguing. I just want to put it on the record that you've now breached the confidentiality of the room at the Brant County Health
No, I
Units.
have not.
Well,
I have not, because we are being obliged and asked by the provincial government to consider mergers, voluntary mergers of health units. I said nothing more than that. So don't accuse me of it, please.
Okay, with
Sorry,
that.
Madam Chair, I did have the floor before I was interrupted. My comment stands, and perhaps there will be a sanction for what was said just now. We'll see about that, okay? But I would remind everybody that Councillor Bell's comment with respect to what's actually on the floor was that we could either do it as part of this committee or we can do it in some other way. And I would appreciate if we would all consider to do it in some other way, which perhaps might involve the two mayors being representative of their two councils. And further to my comment about Brant County Health Unit, what my comment was related to a letter that was sent by the MOH, which was critical of the provincial policies that we are supposed to be implementing. That's what it was about, not about the in-camera matter that Councillor Bell just discussed in front of the public.
Okay, I think I saw Mayor Davis wants one last comment.
Sticking to the hospital issue. It's been a good discussion of a critically important issue to both communities. I still don't think it makes sense to add it to this committee. It'll be like one of 14 items. This is such an important issue. It should be one item for, I agree, a joint committee of the city and the county. Perhaps it could be that it could be city and county members being appointed to a committee struck by the hospital, where together we work together to see this new hospital come to fruition. I would suggest, though, that banding about numbers, isn't very helpful. With the information that we got was originally 1 billion, and we were told the last time there was an official presentation was approaching 2. I've never heard anything like $3 or $4 billion. But what is clear is this: the hospital now has a new chief executive officer, a new president. I know that certainly we at the city have reached out. I know that there is a presentation going to be made to City Council. I think it's at the end of June, where we expect we're going to be given some up-to-date information regarding the planning for the new hospital. I'm hoping at that time, and in advance of that, we can, between the city and county, work together in terms of councillors and mayors How can we best work together in a way that supports the hospital as they move forward in their plan for a new or upgraded facility? And how do we do that without alienating the province and getting us taken off the list? It's a delicate balancing act, and but it is a worthy effort. It's a joint effort. I believe our communities expect of us, and I know that certainly I'm up for it. I'd like to see us do it, just in a way that's totally constructive, and not through a committee that has 14, 15 other items that we're dealing with. So.
Thank you for that. And I think, from my understanding, we also have them coming to speak to our council with the presentation. So hopefully, in the near future, all of us will have a few more details and more accurate information to be working with. So with that, we do need to vote on whether or not we're going to be adding the Brantford General Hospital to the list. This one will again require the 2/3 majority as per the terms of reference. So I will turn it over to the clerk to do our recorded vote.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Carries unanimously. Failed. My apologies.
Okay, so going back to our list of services here, are there any others that folks would like to speak to individually? Councillor Samwell.
If appropriate at this point, I would like to move an amendment to put transit back on the table.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the amendment would be to basically to add or move transit from Group A to Group B in the same way that Councillor Sicoli's Transportation 1 moved, and I'm seeking a seconder.
Okay, we have a seconder in Councillor Oakley. So discussion on that amendment. Councillor Chambers.
Just could you repeat that? I couldn't hear the.
So she is seeking to have the transit item moved from A to B to go back onto the list in a similar fashion to how we have done with transportation. And that's moved by Councillor Samuel and seconded by Councillor Oakley. So any discussion on that one, Councillor McCurry?
I have something flippant to say. I'm looking forward to the day when I can take the bus to visit my friend in Burford.
And if ever there was a reason not to have.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this one? Councillor Oakley.
Through the chair, just to highlight my support of this, in sort of the same vein as transportation, I am widely supportive of this file. Initially supporting A due to the staff requirements, but if we're looking, as we were at the last item, to take a guiding role in this, then I'm happy to have those conversations here.
Mayor Davis.
Yeah, I'm okay with that as well. Although I would say to staff, keep doing what you're doing. I understand they've had between city and county some really excellent discussions about perhaps starting with a bus between Paris and Brantford. I know they're making progress, and I would say to staff, keep doing that. Even though we might add it back onto the list, that's not a signal to stop doing what you're doing, thinking we then carry the ball. No, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great work that I'm aware of behind the scenes, and hopefully we'll soon see something coming out of that, something concrete like this initial step, which would be a transit bus route between the two communities.
Okay, Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I thought we had this on Group A because we already had work in progress, and maybe Alison could share with us where that progress is.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, this is something that has already been discussed and is in the works. So the feasibility, or at least initial feasibility, of expanded transit between the city and the county is coming back as a proposal, we hope in June, with timelines and costs, or at least rough costs associated. And then it's going to have to be referred to budget, obviously, to respective councils. So I think staff would just be seeking clarification, similar to transportation, because these are already actually in progress. Whether the direction from this committee is that it then be reporting now be directed to joint services versus our respective councils.
Councillor Samuel?
Yeah, I would say similarly to transit through you, Chair. That's exactly what I wanted to see, was that it continues to move forward with the work of staff, but that it reports here and has the support of this committee going forward to our councils. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion, or are we ready to vote on this one? Record. Okay, we'll turn it over to the clerk, and he can do a recorded vote on whether or not we add transit back to the list.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Leave your hand raised until I call your name. Councillor Sokoli, Celeste, McCreary, Mayor Davis, Councillor Samwell, Councillor Oakley, Councillor Hunt, Chair Kyle. Members opposed, Councillor Chambers, Bell, and Mayor Bailey. Motion carries.
Okay, going back to our list here, any other individual, Mayor Davis?
Yeah, I wanted to clarify something. I know that we on the list, we have sports recreation facilities, Apps Mills. I know it's in B, but I just want to confirm with staff, is Apps Mills part of that?
Well, ask
'Cause
Allison.
I saw
to
it in
comment.
brackets, but I wasn't sure what that meant.
Thank you through you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry. It is included in there. So we're in just the initial phases right now, I would say, of exploring that. There was a tour a couple of weeks ago, and what we've asked is for clarification from GRC of exactly what they require in terms of keeping it operational. So we're exploring some different mechanisms, whether that's joint programming that happens, and then it's sort of transferred over in terms of ownership, what exactly that might look like. So we would hope in October we can come back with a solidified plan after looking at the feasibility, and that would come back as a decision in the fall.
Yeah, and I can tell the members that there's kind of as well a tandem parallel effort by myself and councillors Miller and Coleman. We all sit on the GRCA board, and we hope within the next month, through some pressure that was exerted up by the GRCA board, that there should be, we expect there's going to be a meeting with the municipal staff from Brantford, perhaps from Norfolk and Haldeman, and the school boards as well, and hopefully staff representation with GRCA to determine exactly what does everybody want, what is the interest of the respective organizations, what is it we can do to reach some kind of common ground to keep Apps Mills and keep the outdoor education programs there. So we're optimistic. But it will take a joint effort by city and county elected representatives who are on the GRCA, and also working with staff. So far so good, and hopefully it continues. And I'm glad to hear that it is part of this committee's mandate.
Okay, I saw Councillor Sokoli and then Councillor Chambers.
Yeah, could someone clarify for me where Apps Mills is mentioned in here? I keep reading and reading. Where is it? I can't see it anywhere. Is it in the first report?
Yeah, it's in the first report in 4.1.
Why don't I have a 4.1? Well, I'll just trust that it's in here. And as far as governance goes, we voted down adding that. Do we need to reverse that?
Can I just clarify the first question Councilor Sokoli had?
Yeah.
Yes, it's in item 4.1, Councilor Sokoli. When we met on, it wasn't included on the original list when we met on October 30th. Obviously, the mayor of the city and one of the county council members were quite concerned. They just left the GRC board meeting and asked for that to be added. So that's why it's been added in brackets as well.
Sorry, what, I have 4 and then it jumps to 5 and I have nothing in there, so I think I'm just missing. I don't know. I'll look for it later.
Okay, I think we were going to Councillor Chambers next.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, as county councilors know, that part of Brant County is part of Long Point Conservation Authority, and they too have an education program at the Bacchus Heritage Site, and Long Point has funded it through their own funding mechanisms. Essentially, the education programs cannot and should not be funded from the levy of the municipal partners of the Conservation Authority, but Long Point found a way, and I believe through financing alternatives that perhaps GRCA can do the same thing. So hopefully they can resolve that issue without having to bring that back onto the levy of all the county people and all the city people, where part of the county is served with the same facility, but having to not pay for it. So they're actually being double paid. Again, it's a county geographical thing that gets complicated unless you know and live out in the area.
Okay, is there any further discussion about the by keeping sport and recreation facilities? This one is currently slated to be left on the list, so we don't have to vote to add it. So if there's no other further discussion, then we can move to the next on the list. And if nobody has any burning desire on a specific topic, we could just start at the top with the ones we haven't already addressed and do the vote on whether or not we want them removed. So any other comments on specific topics here? Okay, so Chris, why don't we start with household hazardous waste then, and we'll call the vote on each of the ones that still needs to be removed.
Sure.
Does that work?
So through the chair, the first one's household hazardous waste, and that is currently in Group A. And Group A's recommendation is to remove. So the vote will be to vote in favor of the removal. So what you're voting on is to remove the household hazardous waste.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
Perhaps we could save ourselves some time if you simply ask for a last call for amendments, and then we can simply adopt whatever's left. Would that be more efficacious?
Yeah, through the chair, I was thinking that as well, but there was a request by Mayor Davis in the beginning of the meeting to vote on everything separately. So if that's how the committee would like to proceed, then it's up to the committee, really.
Mayor Davis?
Yeah, I can modify that because I know looking at the issues, I have spoken to the ones that I wanted to speak to. Otherwise, I think I'm pretty much content with what's recommended in terms of A, B, and C. So I wouldn't see quite the need, as I saw at the beginning of the meeting, to have that separate vote. But of course, someone else may disagree with me.
Okay. Councillor Hunt?
Yeah, so through you to Chris. So if as I understand it, the amendments that we have already voted on are to the original motion, the original motion on the floor, which indicates Group A, B, and C. So unless we're changing anything that's, like we've already changed 2 Group A's to B, and we've removed 2 suggested Group B's, and then we've removed something out of Group C. So I tend to agree that really at this point we could vote on the actual motion on the floor versus going through the laundry list.
So that's okay with you? All right. So then let's do that.
For the motion as amended, all those in favor, please raise your hand and leave your hand raised until I call your name. Councillor Sokoli, McCreary, Mayor Davis, Councillor Bell, Councillor Samwell, Councillor Oakley, Councillor Hunt, Chair Kyle, Mayor Bailey. Members opposed? Councillor Chambers. And the motion as amended carries.
All right. So that takes us to 4.3, which again is that report with respect to physician recruitment that was, the action here is to be received. So is there any discussion before we vote on that? Okay, so we will call the question on that report.
Item 4.3, Councillors Sokoli, Sless, McCreary, Mayor Davis, Councillor Bell, Councillor Samwell, Councillor Oakley, Councillor Hunt, Chair Kyle, Mayor Bailey. Members opposed? Councillor Chambers, I didn't have your vote. In favor? Okay. Carries.
Okay, moving right along here to 4.4, which is the city-county shared opportunities for vehicles for hire. So just a note that, I guess we don't have to worry about that, never mind. So I believe we do have someone here from staff, city staff, that's going to come and speak to this report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We have Jill Binkley here. She's our supervisor of licensing services, and she's here to speak to you. So, here, Jill.
Thank you. So through the committee, through the chair to the committee, the report basically summarizes activity that's happened at council recently in the city of Brantford. We have heard from our taxi broker community that they would like to see more of a shared arrangement between the city and the county, possibly creating more opportunities for brokers, drivers on each side of the border, in addition to accessible service for community members. So really what we're asking tonight is if there is an appetite for county staff and city staff to review our bylaws further and see if we can present something that is more of a shared approach.
Okay, thanks for that, Jill. Any discussion? Councillor Sless and then Councillor Oakley.
Thank you. Joe, we got an email from the owner, I think, of I believe a taxi service in the county, quite concerned that he wasn't consulted. Will that be part of the review process before a recommendation comes forward?
Through the chair to Councillor Sless, absolutely. So that would be on the county side of things, but certainly we would work with the entire community across both borders to ensure that brokers are consulted. So with the city's progress to date, we were really waiting on council's decision as to whether they agreed with staff recommendations, if there would be any amendments. So at that time, we could not engage brokers that were not operating within the city. But now, as we move past the July 1st deadline, we can contact brokers who are operating in the county, invite them to obtain a city license before any type of shared arrangement is agreed on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Oakley.
Through the chair, this makes sense to me. Make it in some of our conversation earlier about transportation and transit, making it easier for our residents to get to and from each other's municipalities makes sense. Make it easier for the employers and for the staff to get their licensing. This makes sense as a joint venture, in my mind.
Okay, any further discussion on this one? So my understanding with this one too is that this will just come back to this committee at one of our future meetings, correct? Okay. Okay, so if there's no further discussion, we will call the vote on report 4.4. So I'll turn it over to clerk.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Leave your hand raised till I call your name. Councillor Sokoli, Sless, McCreary, Councillor Chambers, Mayor Davis, Councillor Bell. Everyone has their hands up, so I'll stop there. Carries unanimously.
Excellent. Okay, so that brings us to 5.1.1, which is the Joint City County Shared Services Committee meeting minutes from October 30th. So before we call the vote on that one, are there any errors or omissions that need to be addressed? Seeing none, turn it over to you for the vote.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Carries unanimously on a recorded vote.
Excellent. Okay, so brings us to 6, which is resolution. There are no resolutions. There are no notices of motion. So that brings us to the end of our agenda. So looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Oakley.